Hello, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to my second floor lair. Today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books 37. Before we get started, I want to greet some individuals, including Jokes Parma, Miguel Uy, John T. Foliantes, Kyla Kino, Kalenko, and J.R. Hollandoni, Resalest students, all fine young people. And thank you to those young people for their wonderful comments on YouTube. I appreciate the positive feedback because we all need encouragement in life because life is discouraging. So thank you, and God bless all of you. Okay, our first book today is Frindle by Andrew Clements, 1996. This is a wonderful children's book. Read out loud to our son Tim. In the story, this boy, Nick Allen, is inspired by his teacher, and then later becomes his enemy, unfortunately. I hope they reconciled. I can't remember. So I believe this was an English teacher, and the whole issue was words, the derivation of words, how words originate, and so forth. So this boy, he decides to rename the word pen, what you write with, a writing pen, Frindle. He decides to do that. And the new word takes the world by storm. So anyway, and I guess the teacher initially didn't like that, but it's a real good, very entertaining story. The next book is All American Girls by Marla Miller, 1999. This is the story of the U.S. women's national soccer team. Tremendous book. They won the first Women's World Cup in 1991. Of course, yeah, I guess they have Women's World Cups, these international soccer competitions among countries. They finished third in the 1995 Women's World Cup, won the gold medal in the 1996 Olympics, and again won the 1999 Women's World Cup. Some of the star players include Mia Hamm, Brandi Chastain, Michelle Akers, Julie Foudy, Christine Lilly, and Brianna Scurry. So a wonderful book about women's soccer. Something, as I've said before, I think it's good for girls to play sports, to have that enjoyment, running around and camaraderie and so forth. The next book is Greatest Teams, The Most Dominant Powerhouses in Sports by Tim Crothers, 1998. Well, this has a lot of swell photographs. It's a Sports Illustrated coffee table book. It's one of these big clunky books. Talks about the dominant teams in baseball, the New York Yankees, Boston, the NBA, the Boston Celtics, and hockey, the Montreal Canadiens, and football, NFL football, the Green Bay Packers. Specifically, he gets into the 1990s Chicago Bulls, the 1970s Cincinnati Reds in baseball, the 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers in the NFL, the 1980s 49ers in the NFL, the 1940s and 50s Cleveland Browns in the AAFC and the NFL, 1970s Dolphins in the NFL, the 1930s Chicago Bears, the 1960s Baltimore Orioles in baseball, and finally the 1950s Detroit Lions. So interesting. It's a good sports history in the four major American sports. The next book is The Landry News by Andrew Clements, 1999. I was getting into this author, Andrew Clements. I read this book out loud to our son, Tim. It's another very fine book. This character, Kara Landry, is a 5th grade student, and she's very creative. And she creates her own newspaper. Her teacher is Mr. Larson, a once great but burned out teacher. I guess he lost his enthusiasm. However, her newspaper becomes very popular, and Mr. Larson gets his teaching spark back. A very touching story. It's always wonderful when students can be creative and achieve, and if teachers can motivate them and have positive relationships with students, and teachers can enjoy teaching. This kind of struck a chord with me because I've been teaching since 1989 and definitely have had times where I've lost my enthusiasm. Wonderful book. The next book is My Personal Best, Life Lessons from an All-American Journey by John Wooden and Steve Jameson, 2004. This is about the the man who's considered the greatest college basketball coach of all time. He coached the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA Bruins, and they won 10 championships in 12 years. This is incredible. He was the Indiana farm boy who made good. Coached guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton. And he had traditional values. He was a kind man, but he believed in hard work. And, guys need... I know he also was in favor... He wanted guys to shave. Bill Walton one time came to training camp with long hair and a beard, and Wooden said, you're going to get a haircut, Bill. Anyway, he believed in character, the importance of character, and this is something I believe very strongly, that if you're a good person, that's what's important in life. Be a good person. Eventually, good things will happen if you're patient and persevere, keep going. That you might have talent, but if your character's no good, you're going to have problems sooner or later. So this is he's a very inspiring fellow, John Wooden. Okay, the next book is WNBA Stars of Women's Basketball by James Ponte, 1999. Oh, I really enjoyed this. He talks about these famous players. During the off-season of the NBA, they have the WNBA, which overlaps a little bit. And he talks about Lisa Leslie, who actually appeared in I think she was a judge in the recent NBA All-Star game, maybe the slam dunk contest. Cynthia Cooper, who was a star player, won 4 championships. Rebecca Lobo had a serious injury. Susie McConnell-Serio played for Cleveland. Cheryl Swoops, Teresa Weatherspoon played for New York. And then these teams, the LA Sparks, where Lisa Leslie played. Houston Comets won the first 4 WNBA titles. Now, I think they no longer exist. Too bad. The New York Liberty, who was Cleveland's rival, and my beloved defunct Cleveland Rockers. Also the defunct EBL and 2-time champion Columbus, Ohio Quest. Funny story, I was in the Philippines, and I was kind of out of touch with stuff in the U.S. One day, I think it was we had a typhoon, no school turned on ESPN, and there was this women's basketball game. WNBA, and I thought, whoa, look at this. It had the Cleveland Rockers playing the New York Liberty. I didn't even know Cleveland had a team. I'm a big Cleveland sports fan, so I thought, wow. And they won that. I watched the game, and they won. I was so happy. Cleveland was a contender, but they never won the championship. I think they got to the East Finals. I was all excited watching a playoff game one day, and I think it was East Finals, Cleveland and New York. And New York got out to a 35-5 lead, and oh my gosh, what a bummer, So we didn't win that game, and then one year I came home. We came home to visit. I went to a Cavs game, a Cleveland Cavaliers game, and at one point I went to the store, where they sell jerseys and stuff, and I asked the lady. I said, "Where's the Rockers stuff?" And she says, "Oh, they disbanded, they folded," and I didn't know, and I felt very bad that Cleveland Rockers no longer went out of business. I don't know, I guess they were losing money. So anyway, Cleveland doesn't have a team anymore. I used to be a very strong supporter of them. The next book is The Greatest Baseball Stories Ever Told, edited by Jeff Silverman, 2001. Oh, wonderful book. Doris Kearns Goodwin, the great Brooklyn Dodgers fan. Abbott and Costello, they were comedians way back. Roger Angels written wonderful books. Ring Lardner, years ago, was a writer. John Updike, famous novelist, he did some baseball writing. Red Barber, Zane Grey, Vin Scully, W.P. Kinsella, who writes these really wonderful. He wrote Field of Dreams, the book that The Field of Dreams was based on. Bart Giamatti, regarding Who's on First. He talks about the Brooklyn Dodgers, the death of Ty Cobb, Ted Williams' last home run, Jackie Robinson, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Roger Maris, Sandy Koufax, Pete Reiser, and others. Wonderful book. The next book is Frankenbug by Stephen Cousins, 2000. I read this out loud to our son, Tim. This character, Adam Krickelstein, is an insect lover, and he gets bullied by this boy named Jeb McAllister. And Adam decides he builds a monster bug to fight Jeb. So this is a very entertaining and scientific book. And this, I think, is how science should be taught. Very good. Wonderful story. Frankenbug. The next book is The Way It's Supposed to Be by James Herndon, 1968. This is a story written by a teacher's account of his first year teaching at a mostly African-American junior high school in the United States. He struggles mightily. There is chaos. He finds some things that work, but is fired for being unconventional. He's looking for a better way of dealing with kids, and because he finds that traditional methods don't work, like especially in the U.S., where you can really try to be a disciplinarian and really impose your will. I mean, I guess you can, depending on, but very often it just doesn't work because the kids are too defiant or rebellious. That's what I believe in, winning kids over. Ultimately, that's what we need. We need to win people over. You can't just bully them or hammer them over the head. Reminds me of my favorite, one of my favorite movies, Dead Poets Society, about this wonderful, inspiring teacher. But the thing is, he gets fired at the end. Anyway, the main thing in life is just try to contribute and do what you can do. And failure is not permanent. And that's why I'm kind of happy about these videos, because hopefully they can have educational merit and it's be a part of my teaching career. The next book is Venus to the Hoop by Sarah Corbett, 1997. This is about the 1996 Olympics U.S. women's basketball team. They won the gold medal, and they trained for 14 months and had a 60-0 record. In other words, they played 60 games and did not lose. And this inspired the start of women's pro basketball in the United States. First the ABL, which went out of business, and then the WNBA, which is still doing very well. So the players mentioned are Cheryl Swoops, Rebecca Lobo. Remember seeing a game, Rebecca Lobo was, she was playing, and Bill Clinton was, I think she played for the New York Liberty, and Bill Clinton was at the game, and they kept showing Clinton in the stands, because Bill and Hillary Clinton lived in New York City. I think they still do. And he was eating French fries and talking to somebody behind him, kept offering French fries to this, whoever it was, this fan, just a regular person. Bill Clinton was so personable. So anyway, I remember watching that on TV. Ruthie Bolton, Lisa Leslie, the first woman to dunk in a game, real tall, Dawn Staley. And this women's team beat Brazil in the final game to win the gold medal. Wonderful. The next book is Amazing But True Sports Stories by Phyllis and Xander Hollander, 1986. So some of the things, Phil Necro, who was a baseball player, won his 300th game without throwing his knuckleball in the games. They used to say, I guess somebody said, you can't win without throwing your knuckleball. So he decided to prove them wrong, and he won. That's 300, that's a real milestone. Brett Saberhagen, who was the MVP of the 1985 World Series, and he was only 21. I remember that. I think, just imagine you're 21 and you may have achieved something like that. And then talks about a 33-inning minor league baseball game. It's supposed to be 9 innings. 33. Wow, they must have been tired. The Sid Finch Sports Illustrated April Fool's joke in 1985. They fooled people with this guy. Purportedly he could throw a baseball pitch 160 miles an hour. Joe Nuxhall in 1944, since the Second World War was on and there was a lack of players in Major League Baseball. He was only 15, and he played in the Major League Baseball. Cesar Tovar and Bert Campaneris, who both played all positions in one game each. Tovar in 1968 and Campaneris in 1965. I guess they kept just for the heck of it. They kept moving them around because apparently these guys were very versatile, and I guess all positions. That means they pitched and caught in that game. Really something. John Riggins, who was this crazy guy, the 1982 Super Bowl MVP. Tom Dempsey, who was born with only half a foot, and he had a special shoe. He kicked a 63-yard field goal. That was the longest for a long time. William the Refrigerator Perry, this huge guy who played for the Chicago Bears in the 80s. Bud Grant, Hakeem Olajuwon, Chuck Connors, famous actor on the TV show The Rifleman back in the 60s, played baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers and Chicago Cubs, and he played in the NBA for the Boston Celtics. Wilt Chamberlain, who scored 100 points in an NBA game for the Philadelphia Warriors in Hershey, Pennsylvania in 1962. And that's still the record. Nobody's broken that. Gordie Howe, who at age 52 played in the World Hockey Association for the Hartford Whalers in 1977 with his two sons, Marty and Mark. And then this 6 Suter family brothers who all played in the NHL. So many amazing stories. Good job. The next book is Bats and Balls and Altar Calls by David B. Smith, 1987. The author is a big Los Angeles Dodgers baseball fan, and he uses baseball stories to teach Christianity. And so his message is have faith in your team and hope for next season, especially when your team is eliminated from the contention from winning a championship. He talks about guys like Steve Garvey, Rick Monday, Dusty Baker, and Dave Lopes, star players for the LA Dodgers years ago. The next book is What Would Joey Do by Jack Gantos, 2003. Wonderful book. I read this out loud to our son Tim. Joey Pigsize, this character, is maybe 12 years old. His parents are crazy and they fight a lot. He is homeschooled with a mean, blind girl. He tries to help people, but he learns that he needs to live his life and let others be. Very interesting. I do believe we should help people, but the thing is, there are limitations in what you can do. Some people are just miserable, and you just have to let them be in their misery. What can you do if someone's determined to be unhappy, or they're just they're doing things that are wrong, but determined to continue that way? You can't help people until they're really they ask for help or they're open to help. The next book is Super Sports Question and Answer Book by Michael J. Pawlowski, 1992. So Yogi Berra won the most World Series in baseball history. He won 10. The Perry brothers, Gaylord and Jim, both won Cy Young Awards in baseball. Very, very good. Did a good job. The next book is Out of My League by George Plimpton, 1961. Plimpton was a famous sports writer. In this book, he wrote this when he was only 23. After the 1958 baseball season, Plimpton, there was a bet whether he could, pitch against some all-star players and get any of them out. So it was a $1,000 bet. He worked for Sports Illustrated. So they got this thing set up, and he pitched against all-stars like Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Gil Hodges, and others. And he was able to get Willie Mays out. I guess he must have had 9 fielders behind him. I don't know what Mays did, but the guy caught the ball. So he's like, wow, I got Willie Mays out. The next book is Wheelchair Champions, A History of Wheelchair Sports by Harriet May Savitz, 1978. Well, as medicine advanced in the 20th century, in the Second World War, a lot of fellows, probably who would have died earlier, they survived, but they had lost their legs. They'd been probably very badly wounded. And what this meant is after the Second World War, and at the same time, they started developing the new collapsible wheelchair. So this meant in modern times you have a lot more people in wheelchairs. And all these fellows, they're probably young men, and they got many years to live, and they can't walk, so they're in wheelchairs. So the nice thing that happened is wheelchair basketball developed, became very popular, along with other sports. And this, so that's what this is talking about. This wheelchair, especially wheelchair basketball. I know, and it's good. Give these guys, a chance to do play some sports, even though they can't run, but they can still shoot, and they can, use their arms to push the wheelchair, get the wheelchair moving around. And I know they have that in Cleveland, so that's good that they developed that. Interesting. The next book is The Janitor's Boy by Andrew Clements, 2000. This I think my third Andrew Clements novel that I had read in a short period of time. Another wonderful children's book. Jack, this character, is in the 7th grade. He's a boy in the 7th grade. His father is the school janitor, and Jack is ashamed. But Jack learns that his dad's job is hard and important, and he's a good man. John, the dad, helps Jack become a man, and Jack helps his dad become a boy again. Very touching, wonderful book. This is one thing I think is very important about relations between generations yeah, this is true. Sometimes we all have to grow up, face life, and become serious and work, but sometimes we lose the joy of life. And, little kids have that joy. So this is where they can help, children can help adults to regain that. We don't have to go through life being so serious all the time. At the same time, adults need to help children. We do have to grow up and become responsible and work and so forth. So this is a wonderful book. It's nice that the boy finally does respect his father, that this work needs to be done, the things that the janitors do. The next book is Number the Stars by Lois Lowry, 1989. This another children's book, won the Newbery Award. It's set in Denmark in 1943. And this character, Anne-Marie Johansson, and her family saved their Jewish friends, the Rosens, from the Nazis and helped them to escape to freedom in Sweden. So it's a story of courage and friendship. Yeah, I know that, these countries, when Nazi Germany conquered them in the war in Europe, different countries, then they were rounding up Jewish people, and they killed 6 million of them in the Holocaust. So if you were a good person, you knew Jewish people. This is what the story of the Diary of Anne Frank is about. They were hiding there, and there were people who helped them. And the thing is, the best thing that you could do is to help them leave the country. And Sweden remained neutral. For whatever reason, Germany did not conquer Sweden. So they were. This is part of the history where they were helping people to get to Sweden. Because if Jewish people got to Sweden, they'd be safe there, and stay there till the end of the war before they go home. So this is so important, to have courage, and very inspiring. The people in Europe who helped Jewish people and really and took big risks with their lives. Sometimes risked everything, because if they got caught, sometimes the Nazis would take them away and they would die too and lose all their property and die. The next book is Flashing Before My Eyes by Dick Schaap. And 2001. Dick Schaap's a famous sports writer, and he talks about all these famous people that he knew, like Hank Aaron in baseball, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Joe Namath in the NFL, Jim Brown played for Cleveland, Bo Jackson, the guy who was a tremendous baseball and football star, Joe DiMaggio. So he wrote for newspapers, magazines, and he was also on TV. Talks about Joe DiMaggio Jr., who died at age 57, a few months after his father's death. He was living in a battered trailer in Northern California and worked in a junkyard. So this is really tragic, that the life of Joe DiMaggio Jr. Dick Schaap's a good guy, very kind man, very good fella. The next book is Reaching for the Stars, a celebration of Italian Americans in Major League Baseball. Edited by Larry Frindle, 2003. Wow, I really enjoyed this book. It's and one of the things he talks about is only in America did regionally loyal Italians. And what that means is, maybe they didn't think of themselves as Italian. Well, I'm from Rome, or I'm from Sicily, or different parts of Florence, and that's what they had a sense of being. Kind of like in the Philippines, where Filipinos are. They're from there, where they have a sense of being from a certain province. That's who they are, and it's only when they go overseas, where Filipinos go overseas, or maybe when they have a sense of being really Filipino. Except for maybe the Ilocanos, who I've heard, like in Hawaii, the Ilocanos still remain, just want to be with the other Ilocanos, and not with Visayans. Anyway, so in America, these fellows who from different parts, they had developed a sense of being Italian, being in America. And then baseball helped them become American. Joe DiMaggio, the greatest Italian-American hero of all time. Ernie Lombardi, who hit the ball so hard and ran so slow that infielders played in the outfield, because he was a good hitter, but he couldn't run. So if they could stop the ball, they could throw him out at first. Sal Magli, Jason Giambi, Tommy Lasorda, Tony Lazzeri. So this is for if you're baseball fans who have an Italian-American background. The next book is A Dream Season by Gary Carter and John Huff Jr., 1987. So the story of the longtime Montreal Expos catcher and good guy, very good guy. he ended up playing for the New York Mets as catcher, and he's talking about the 1986 season. Their epic World Series against the Boston Red Sox. He went 7 games. And he talks about guys like Davey Johnson, the manager, Dwight Gooden, the star pitcher, Ray Knight, third baseman, Mookie Wilson, I think who had the game-winning hit, Len Dykstra, Jesse Orozco got the final out, Darryl Strawberry, big hitter. I think Gary Carter has died. I don't know what happened with him. Very sad he died relatively young, because he's about my age, a little younger. And I remember reading about he was estranged from his brother. He had an older brother, and of course, Gary Carter became really famous, and his older brother. It was hard for him, to have his younger brother, really do so well, and that was a sad thing. This happens in families. Anyway, the next book is Shoeless Joe and Ragtime Baseball by Harvey Frommer, 1992. Wonderful book. Joe Jackson, the incredible Cleveland Nap and Cleveland Indian, Chicago White Sox baseball player. Way back in the early 1900s, he was a simple Southern boy. He first played in baseball for the Philadelphia A's, and he had a real hard time. Most of the guys were, I think, from the North. He was a Southerner, had a very strong. He's a real country boy. The guys all made fun. They were making fun of him. You know how it is. This is the thing in life when people are hard on each other, and they were very hard on him. He went home. He couldn't take it. Later, he was the scapegoat for baseball during the 1919 Black Sox scandal. So that was too bad. He was really blamed, and then he was banned from baseball. That's why they had the saying, "Say it ain't so, Joe." Charlie Comiskey, the White Sox owner, Commissioner Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, according to this book, were the real bad guys. And then his teammates on that 1919 White Sox team, Eddie Cicotte, the pitcher, Buck Weaver, Swede Risberg, Lefty Williams, and Chick Gandil. And if you've seen the movie 8 Man Out, it gets into that whole story. It's a very interesting thing. I'm still in favor of Shoeless Joe Jackson being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, because I think he really deserves that. So anyway, the next book is Sport by Louise Fitzhugh, 1979. This is the author of Harriet the Spy, another children's book. It's wonderful. Read it out loud to our son Tim. This character, I guess the character's named Sport, and she lives and he lives with his good father. And then in the story, his mother is mean and tries to kidnap him to get more inheritance money. But there's a happy ending. So anyway, it's kind of a painful issue with it, having a mean mother. But anyway, this can happen, because people are different. Not everybody's kind. The next book is Mayfield Crossing by Vonda Michelou Nilsson, 1993. I read this out loud to our son Tim. It's a tremendous book. It's set in 1960 in a small town. The children kids in a real small town must go to school in a big school where they are rejected. Yeah, so the love of baseball helps them to become accepted. This is a nice thing of sports. Can help people to overcome differences. Help them develop friendships. Hopefully, that can be. The next book is Power, Money, and Sex by Deion Sanders, 1998. Real good book. This guy was a football and baseball star, played in the NFL and Major League Baseball. And so he's the only guy to play in a World Series and a Super Bowl. And also the only guy to hit a home run in baseball and score an NFL touchdown the same week. Yeah, really interesting. He won the 1994 Super Bowl with the 49ers and the 1995 Super Bowl with the Cowboys. However, he was spiritually poor. He attempted suicide, then became a spiritual person, and is deeply devoted to seeking God. The pitfalls of fame. Thank you so much for watching. We're out of time. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.